Tonight, on First at 9 this Thursday, the 15th of May 2025. Looming burden. Heavy debt servicing burden for Sri Lanka by 2028, says the ADB country director. Warns deviation from the reform path will prompt suspension of budgetary support. Done deal. Minister of Finance signs bilateral and mandatory agreements with the Export-Import Bank of India. Agreements are part of Sri Lanka's ongoing external debt restructuring process. Digital milestone. Supreme Court joins the Gov Pay platform. Key legal payments can now be made online. Auctioned off. 26 vehicles including luxury and decommissioned models auctioned off today by the Presidential Secretariat.
Cinec Campus Open Day. May masa 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now, on your top story tonight, as the victims and their families yearn for answers in the aftermath of a tragic bus accident in Garandiyalla, Kothmale, Senior DIG Ajith Rohana reveals that the official report of the 5-member committee appointed by the Acting Inspector General of the Police to probe the catastrophic incident will be submitted by the end of next week. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away from the site of the tragic bus accident, another accident was reported when a van carrying 21 toppled down a precipice and crashed, injuring all passengers. On May 11th, a Sri Lanka Transport Board bus travelling from Kattaragama to Kurunegala via Nuwara veered off the road and plunged down a precipice near Garandiyalla on the Nuwara-Gampala main road, resulting in at least 23 fatalities. 16 passengers injured are still receiving treatment in hospitals. Following the tragic accident, several investigations were launched into the incident. As part of such efforts, a 5-member committee headed by Senior DIG Ajith Rohana was appointed by Acting Inspector General of Police Priyantha Weerasooriya. The committee has so far recorded statements from the bus conductor and passengers who survived the incident. The committee has also inspected the bus in question as well as the site of the accident, while several expert reports are also scheduled to be obtained. Committee head Senior DIG Ajith Rohana claims that the official report of the committee will be published by the end of next week once the expert reports due are submitted. Meanwhile, a separate team comprising several high-ranking officials was appointed by Kamal Amarasinghe, Commissioner General of the Department of Motor Traffic, to probe the tragic accident. The team from the Department of Motor Traffic also inspected the bus involved in the accident at the Kothmale police station. The crashed bus was recovered with the assistance of officers attached to the technical division of the Sri Lanka Transport Board's Kattaragama bus depot.
විදුමත් පරීක්ෂණයට සම්බන්ධ සියලුම දත්ත සහ තොරතුරු සමග පරීක්ෂණ කටයුතු කළා. ඒ අනුව මේකේ අවසාන තීරණයක් අපිට දෙන්න පුළුවන්. මේ සියලු තොරතුරු අපි පොලිසිය සහ අපේ මොටර වාහන දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ කොමසාරි ජෙනරාල්තුමාට වාර්තා කරනවා.
Afterwards, the team deployed by the Department of Motor Traffic inspected the site of the accident. 4 days after the catastrophic bus accident, a van carrying 21 passengers, including children, also toppled down a precipice a few kilometers away from the site of the tragic bus accident. All passengers sustained injuries and were promptly admitted to the Kothmale Divisional Hospital. 4 passengers reportedly remain in critical condition. Police suspect the accident to have been caused by a mechanical failure in the van, prompting a brake failure. Now in other news, the Asian Development Bank's country director for Sri Lanka, Takafumi Kanadu, says that for Sri Lanka to be ready for debt servicing by 2028, it is essential to implement key reforms crucial for the country's economic development. Speaking at our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, Kanadu highlighted the fiscal burden Sri Lanka will face once debt repayments begin and further emphasized that the government must focus on generating non-debt financial inflows. He also warned that deviating from the reforms already agreed upon with international financial institutions institutions could result in the suspension of the financial support the country is currently receiving.
What are the challenges as we look at Sri Lanka's financing, the macroeconomic situation now, and factors affecting Sri Lanka's readiness to start repaying loans by 2028?
So during the period 2028 to around 2038, there's going to be a heavy debt servicing burden. The country needs to be ready to service those debts. And for that, the only way is for the economy to grow. So that is why these reforms that are ongoing, these growth enhancing reforms, are extremely important. And then of course there needs to be sound macroeconomic situation that lasts, and the political stability as well. What the country needs is non-debt creating financial inflows, not taking on more debt. So this is what the government needs to aim for.
How important is it for Sri Lanka to stick to these programs and fulfill and uphold parameters set by agencies as yours?
So we provide budget support on the back of successful reforms implemented, and we release that tranche. So we will not be in a favorable position if those reforms are reversed. We will not be able to continue with our budget support the following year. So it is extremely important that the reforms implemented are not reversed and they stay on course. And then, you know, the level of reform will become more ambitious as well. As I said, we agree on these policy reforms with the government, and we select the ones that are critical for the economy to extricate itself out of the crisis and to put itself on a growth trajectory. So we do believe that these reforms are very important for the economy, and it also sends a positive message to the investors as well, that Sri Lanka is transforming itself. So I think by ADB, the World Bank, IMF being involved in and selecting the right reforms, and with the government, of course, because ultimately these are the reforms of the government and not ours. We are merely helping to achieve those. So that sends a positive signal to the international community and the investors as well.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Now, on the theme of external debt, the Minister of Finance announced that it has signed bilateral and mandatory agreements with the Export-Import Bank of India related to lines of credit and buyer's credit loan agreements as part of Sri Lanka's ongoing external debt restructuring process. The agreements were signed on March 25th and April 3rd, respectively. The total of the restructured agreements include 7 lines of credit and 4 buyer's credit facilities valued at approximately $930.8 million. Secretary to the Minister of Finance Mahinda Siriwardana signed the agreements on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka. On behalf of India, Nirmit Ved, General Manager of the Exim Bank of India, signed the line of credit agreements, while the Deputy General Manager of the Exim Bank, Amit Kumar, signed the buyer's credit agreements. In a statement, the Sri Lankan Minister of Finance expressed appreciation for the pivotal role played by the Government of India in advancing Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts. Now, in other local news, a series of high-level discussions were held today between President Anura Dissanayake and top diplomats attached to the Sri Lankan Foreign Service. Meanwhile, the President also convened a meeting with the provincial councillors where prevention of corruption at the provincial council level, infrastructure development and proper management of financial disbursements were discussed at length. A discussion between President Anura Dissanayake and provincial governors was held at the Presidential Secretariat this morning. During the meeting, the President granted the governors permission to set up investigation units at the provincial council level to curb corruption and mismanagement. These units will operate in addition to the units already established at the ministerial level to prevent corruption and mismanagement within provincial council government authorities. Infrastructure development of provinces and challenges hindering development were also discussed at the meeting. During these discussions, the President provided viable solutions to the issues raised by the governors. Considering the trifold increase in fiscal disbursements made to provincial councils this year compared to the last, proper management of financial resources was also a focal point of the discussions between the President and the provincial governors. In the meantime, 7 newly appointed foreign ambassadors to Sri Lanka presented their credentials to President Anukumara Dissanayake today at the Presidential Secretariat. The new ambassadors represent the Argentine Republic, the Republic of Zimbabwe, the Republic of Tajikistan, the Republic of the Philippines, the State of Israel, the Kingdom of Cambodia, and the Kingdom of Denmark. President Anukumara Dissanayake also convened a meeting this morning at the Presidential Secretariat with several High Commissioners, ambassadors and state diplomats assigned to various foreign service missions. Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York was also present at the meeting. The President stated that it is the responsibility of the ambassadors to convey Sri Lanka's ongoing political transformation to the international community and to elevate the country's image on the global stage. President Dissanayake also instructed the diplomats to pay special attention to the welfare of Sri Lankans living abroad and that all citizens must be treated fairly and equally without any discrimination when providing consular services. President Dissanayake reiterated that expanding opportunities to attract foreign direct investments and identifying new market opportunities for entrepreneurs operating in Sri Lanka are also core responsibilities of the diplomatic service. Many Sri Lankan diplomats, including the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India, the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to Pakistan and the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, attended the meeting. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says that the government has no moral right to increase electricity tariffs, particularly after publicly pledging to reduce them by 33%. Speaking at a meeting in Mathura, he further claims that the government, having made false promises to win the election, has now turned its back on the people, leaving 22 million citizens adrift. Opposition leader and leader of the Samagi Janabalawegaya Sajith Premadasa today visited the Ullala Masmula Janashakti village in Kamburupitiya, Mathura under the Udagamin Udagamati initiative and assessed issues faced by residents. The Udagamin Udagamati initiative is the second phase of the Udagammana initiative pioneered by late President Ranasinghe Premadasa.
They said that they would reduce household expenditure drastically. They also promised to cut electricity tariffs by 33% and revise the IMF agreement. Through these false promises, they won the election, but today, after deceiving the public, they have turned their backs on you. The government is now operating according to the dictates of the IMF. It has no moral right to increase electricity tariff, especially after publicly promising to reduce them by 33%. You are misled. 22 million people have been pushed off course because of these broken promises. We invite you to join with us on a new path, one that offers humane solutions to the challenges we face. Lend your support to a renewed journey.
Now, several opposition parties held discussions today regarding the establishment of power in local government institutions, in which opposition parties collectively possess more councillors than the ruling National People's Power. With that, here's a look at the latest opinions expressed by both government and opposition politicians regarding the result of the recent local government election.
Off the back of yesterday's meeting between several opposition parties, where discussions were held on the consolidation of power within key local government institutions across the country, secretaries of major opposition political parties convened a meeting this afternoon as well. The discussions was held at a hotel in Colombo. Notably, the SJB and the SLPP did not participate in the discussion. However, representatives of the SLPP and the Podujana Eksat Peramuna met in Colombo this afternoon to discuss the consolidation of power in local government institutions. Key politicians present at the meeting were Sagar Karyawasam and Johnston Fernando on behalf of the SLPP, while Lasantha Alagiyawanna, Duminda Dissanayake and Mahinda Amaravira represented the PEP. Meanwhile, a meeting of the SLPP winning candidates from the LG elections was held at the party office on Nelu Mawatha, under the patronage of party's national organizer Namal Rajapaksha.
ජාතික ජනබලවේගයේ බහුතරය තියෙනවා නම් ඒ අය සභාව පිටවයි. විකෘති දේශපාලන රාමුවක් ඇතුලේ කොට්ටාස ක්‍රමවේදයක් හඳුන්වලා දීලා ස්ථාවර නැති ප්‍රාදේශ සභා ක්‍රමවේදයක් හඳුන්වා දෙන්න වගකීමක් බාරගත්තේ JVP එක. අපි නෙවෙයි. හැබැයි ඒ ක්‍රමවේදයේ ඇතුලේ විපක්ෂයට බහුතරයක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ හින්දා අපි ඒ ජනමතයට හුඟක් දෙනවා.
Now, the Supreme Court today launched its integration with Gov Pay, the government's digital payment platform, marking a major milestone in Sri Lanka's judicial system. Speaking at the inauguration, Chief Justice Mruthu Fernando emphasized that adopting this digital platform would enhance the efficiency of the judiciary by eliminating archaic practices that have been in use for the past 200 years.
Gov Pay, an online payment platform tasked with digitizing all government payments, was launched on February 7th this year. The groundbreaking digital initiative was launched to modernize how government institutions handle payments, enabling seamless transactions through a secure and efficient digital platform. The latest government entity to join the digital platform was the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. The integration was launched at a ceremony held today at the Supreme Court complex under the patronage of Chief Justice Murthu Fernando. Legal professionals, officials from the Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka and Lanka Pay also attended the event.
If you look at the usage of cash, still very high. As per the central bank latest payments bulletin, we still have 1.3 trillion rupees of cash in circulation. So one of the things that we saw over the last 10 or 15 years or so, the central bank, I think we have been driving digital transformation, especially in the private sector and the commercial area. But what we felt was there is a huge vacuum in the government sector, where the majority of the transactions were cash-based. And the first step we took was actually in 2018, we enabled Department of Customs. Probably 90% of the departments, they don't have any system. So that is why we brought this Gov Pay as a service to any of those apps that are already there and people are using, and they can now pay any of those departments. Now we launched this participation of Excellency the President in February. That time we had only 16 departments. Now I think we have almost 35. Our target is to actually drive this up to 50 within the next month or month and a half. So the judicial system must be digitized, and I think if we do that only, we would make things efficient.
By embracing the digital platform Gov Pay, we are not improving efficiency and transparency alone, but also enhancing public trust and ease of access to all stakeholders of the judicial system. This online payment and acceptance portal, I'm sure, will provide a hassle-free and a user-free, 24/7, convenient, efficient, secure and transparent system, accessible from all parts of the globe to each and every one of us. Digitalization of our courts system is long overdue. It is necessary and essential for the advancement of our legal system. And I'm certain this digital platform will eliminate archaic systems that we have been used during the last 200 years. The online platforms will also erase another cancer, corruption, that is slowly but steadily, and will bring us to a corruption-free society.
Accordingly, the new integration will provide an opportunity to make payments online for a number of Supreme Court services that previously required cash payments. The platform will allow lawyers and the public to make a number of payment transactions online, including fees for filing cases, certified copy fees, commercial High Court appeal filing fees, compensation payments, complaint filing fees, and payments for affidavit-related charges.
Now, as part of the second phase of the luxury vehicle auction organized by the Presidential Secretariat, 26 vehicles, including luxury and decommissioned models, were auctioned off today. The President's Media Division reveals that the vehicles auctioned were not part of the official vehicle fleet assigned to the regular staff of the Presidential Secretariat, and that they were used by advisors and staff appointed by the former President.
All auctioned vehicles were manufactured within the past 10 years. The list of auctioned vehicles included 1 BMW, 2 Ford Everests, 1 Hyundai Terracan, 2 Land Rovers, 1 Mitsubishi Montero, 3 Nissan Patrols, 2 Nissan Cars, 1 Porsche Cayenne, 5 SsangYong Rextons, 1 Toyota Land Cruiser Sahara, 6 V8s and 1 Mitsubishi Rosa air-conditioned bus. In the first phase of the auction, 14 luxury vehicles, 6 decommissioned vehicles and various spare parts were sold. The ongoing auction is a part of the government's broad effort to cut unnecessary expenditure and promote financial discipline within state institutions.
Derana recently completed and inaugurated a water project that had been a shortfall for the Dehiyatta Kandiya Kadiripura Sri Medananda Pirivena. With over 60 monks residing at the Pirivena, their only access to water has been the river that flows across the village. Local residents state that there have been reports of monks being threatened by crocodiles on certain occasions. At this outset, Derana coordinated with the Dehiyatta Kandiya Diriya Women's Movement to draw attention to this issue. As a result, the water project, which was a shortfall of the Sri Medananda Pirivena, was completed by the National PVC of Central Industries with joint hands with Derana and was recently handed over to the Buddhist clergy. Welcome back. You're joining Ada Derana, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. Now, the commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Vice Admiral Kanchana Banagoda, says that the Indo-Pacific region lacks an effective maritime institutional framework to safeguard the interests of small island nations within the region. Speaking at the International Conference on Maritime Security of Small, Middle and Island Nations, inaugurated today in Colombo, he emphasized the need for a maritime order based on international rules that protect the rights and sovereignty of smaller nations.
The International Conference on Maritime Security of Small, Middle and Island Nations between Competition, Cooperation and Coexistence, organized by the Institute for National Security Studies, the Consortium of South Asian Think Tanks and the Political Dialogue Asia program of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, was inaugurated today in Colombo. The two-day conference is set to focus on key areas such as strategic competition in maritime domains, competing strategies, the EU's strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and maritime governance.
The COSA network and of course our local partner here on site have been utmost helpful and have been nothing short of amazing to help our engagement as Political Foundation in Germany to really drive forward our activities here in South Asia. Maritime security of small states is a complex and increasingly important issue, especially as global trade, environmental concerns, geopolitical tensions rise. Small states, particularly island nations, or those with extensive coastlines and limited defense capabilities, face unique vulnerabilities in the maritime domain. So for small states, maintaining sovereignty over exclusive economic zones is also particularly critical, as their maritime area often far exceeds their landmass. The challenges for small states is, number one, limited naval and surveillance capacity. There is also legal and institutional gaps in our region. There is external threats, vulnerability to illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. There is use of maritime routes for trafficking in drugs, weapons and people. There is risk of foreign interference or territorial encroachment, and there is environmental and climate vulnerability. So therefore, there is strategic importance of small states as we are located at strategic checkpoints or in resource-rich waters. The key maritime security strategies for regional cooperation also, I think, will be important for information sharing, joint patrols, coordinated action.
The Indo-Pacific region is home to some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. People smuggling and arms transit are concerns, not distant possibilities. Also, we face vulnerabilities, resource limitations, rise of environmental threats, and mostly the challenge of being caught between large powers. So how do we navigate this complex environment? By recognizing our geography and our posture. Secondly, we must embrace multilateralism that is inclusive and practical. This region lacks truly effective institutional framework. Small states must therefore lead in shaping arrangements that are fair, cooperative and regionally driven, not dominated by any power. What is needed is strengthening of shared responsibility and joint capability. At the same time, we must acknowledge a difficult truth. Whilst great powers continue to shape strategic debates, small powers are increasingly bearing the heavy lifting load like search and rescue. Let me offer three priorities. Place small states at the center of conversation, as we are not passive players but bring legitimacy, local knowledge and critical access to key maritime spaces. Invest in expansion of capacities in maritime domain awareness and port security through open and transparent multilateral frameworks. Promote a maritime order based on respect, resilience and international rules by standing firmly with UNCLOS and thereby opposing actions to threaten the rights of smaller nations or destabilize shared sea lanes.
Now, in other security-related updates, the U.S. Embassy in Colombo has provided state-of-the-art radiation and chemical detection equipment valued at $1 million to the Sri Lanka Navy, significantly boosting the country's capacity to detect and respond to nuclear, radiological and chemical threats in its maritime domain and enhancing the Sri Lanka Navy's capability to conduct, visit, board, search and seizure operations. The equipment was supplied through the U.S. Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration and its Office of Nuclear Smuggling Detection and Deterrence. The equipment was officially handed over during a ceremony at the Sri Lanka Naval Headquarters today by U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung. The transfer comes as the first major initiative following the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding aiming to strengthen bilateral cooperation in detecting and preventing illegal transport of nuclear and radioactive materials in February 2024. Now in your business news, the Colombo Stock Exchange extended yesterday's bullish momentum as investors engaged in an active trading session driven by sustained optimism. The SPI registered a 1.14% gain marked by a climb of 184 points to close at 16,315. Melster Corp, Sampath, Commercial Bank, Aitken Spence and Haley's were the key positive contributors to the index. Retail and high net worth investors demonstrated active trading, showcasing positive sentiment primarily towards the banking sector and blue chip counters. Turnover reached 4.6 billion rupees, marking a significant increase of 120% compared to the monthly average of 2.1 billion. The banking sector led today's turnover, contributing 21%, driven by positive earnings reported in recent quarterly results. The capital goods sector and diversified financial sectors were next in line, jointly accounting for 36% of the overall turnover. Foreign investors turned net sellers with a net outflow of 96.8 million rupees. With that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all the news we have for you tonight. For further updates, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the nation's most trusted news source. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.